You know, everybody thought Dad was the ruthless one, but I gotta hand it to you. If you'd been born after those feminists, you would have been the real gangster.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Sopranos Street, and we are here today to discuss whether or not Tony was right. Was Livia the real gangster? In doing so, we will take a second to address the similarity that makes them both well suited for the position, before diving into their differences, how those differences affect their styles of operation, how Livia could have played things differently if she were actually trying to be boss, whether she would have had the makings of a varsity boss, and ultimately how she would compare to her son Tony. Both have the moral flexibility needed for the job due to a lack of any real belief system, which is arguably proven wrong within the context of the show, providing a great in case you didn't notice it type of moment. This lack of belief in the afterlife, or anything in general, is shown throughout the series.
It's all a big nothing.
It's all big nothing.
Tony goes even further in making fun of Paulie for believing he's dragging a bunch of ghouls around with him after visiting a psychic.
How can you just sit there? He warned you about 3 o'clock too.
I don't believe any of this shit. It doesn't mean a fucking thing to me.
Now, Tony was clearly making fun of Paulie's superstition, not spirituality, but at Livia's wake, someone is dragging the ghost of Big Pussy around.
This is a survivor show. Somebody should find the winner, stick a pistol in the face, and say, "You're not gonna survive this unless you give me 25% of that fucking $1 million."
Notice he is in the reflection when it opens, and he had been dead by that point, and he is not there when it closes. One of them was dragging Pussy around, and I doubt it was Furio. Either way, while that similarity made them both suitable, it was two main differences that would distinguish their respective styles, and the first was their demeanors. Despite her penchant for theatrics,
Look at how I live.
Livia is actually much calmer internally, and as long as she's not cooking mushrooms, far more focused than Tony, who is usually being pulled in many directions with many distractions. Both Tony and Janice have a tendency to react impulsively. While Tony admits this,
And you and me, we react without thinking.
with Janice it is easily seen with Richie Aprile. Janice is rightfully enraged when Richie hit her. See that look? That's the look of vengeance. And immediately after, she shoots Richie dead. This is a trait they must have gotten from their father, because in contrast, Livia took that shot through her beehive hairdo like a champ. See that look? That's also a look of vengeance. But unlike Janice, Livia played the long game in terms of her revenge.
Guy like that, and my mother wore him down to a little nub. He was a squeaking little gerbil when he died.
While this might not be a perfect parallel, through persistence and sheer willpower, she turned Johnny Boy, who even Tony seems to somewhat subconsciously know was tougher, into a shell of his former self. This level of patience and focus would give her an advantage over Tony, who can have a tendency to be impatient and sporadic. The other thing that would have an effect on their styles is their levels of proficiency when it comes to mental manipulation. Now, Tony is no slouch in this regard. He managed to outmaneuver Johnny Sack in the meeting about Ralphie, and Johnny was quite sharp. But when it comes to things of a puppeteering nature, a lot of Tony's so-called manipulation isn't based as much in the plausible deniability as it is in just making an assertion and then daring people to call him out on it. While few people do it to his face, many question him behind his back, and this is best again seen with Ralph Cifaretto. Where someone like Carmine Sr. would have waited years and then had him killed under different justifications, Tony's lack of impulse control led him to kill Ralphie so quickly after an incident that his crew really didn't believe his story.
We're off the record here, Albert.
We're off the record. It's Tony. I wouldn't piss on this Ralph if he was on fire. But to whack the guy over a horse?
Livia, on the other hand, shows a much higher aptitude for mental games than Tony, especially in the context of plausible deniability, and this is best seen with Janice and Junior. Now, Janice is a varsity manipulator in her own right, but Livia went pro decades ago and is a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. She knew Janice was there just for the money and wouldn't mind getting rid of her in that effort, so she teased Janice with the idea that there was money hidden and that she might tell, knowing she would be more valuable alive as a potential treasure map than dead.
Well, I think I'm going to leave all my money to you, honey.
What are you talking about? Money.
Where'd I put my money? No, I must have put it somewhere.
Whether or not there actually was any money will be the topic of another episode, but either way, she played Janice like a fiddle, and that's significant because Janice could prove to be quite valuable when it comes to any potential moves Livia would make if she were actually trying to be boss. While that may have all been done for defensive purposes, Livia shows that she is also capable of going on the offensive with her manipulations in her dealings with Junior, who would also be instrumental in any move she might make, and in doing so, she demonstrates the ability to create plausible deniability that Tony lacks. We see her MO right off the bat when she gets Junior to tax Hesh. First, she drops some information to create dissent.
I know how long you waited to be made boss. Just don't let certain people take advantage of your good nature, like they did to Johnny.
Or point the conversation in a specific direction.
How's your Jewish friend?
Hesh? What about her? Are you telling me that since I'm the new boss, I should tax Hesh?
Then she's either quiet, or she doesn't know what you're talking about.
You're looking at the crackers Coglione for putting you in here.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But her manipulation didn't stop at smaller things such as taxing Hesh. She influenced much more serious events and continued to demonstrate her ability to create distance from those events during the process.
Maybe Christopher could use a little talking to. You know. The other one? Filoni?
In this instance, we see her both save Christopher's life and get Brendan Filoni killed, all without really saying anything. A very Carmine Sr. move.
You saying what I think you're saying?
I didn't say nothing.
And Livia continues to demonstrate this pattern as well as her ruthlessness in trying to get back at Tony. When she first starts trying to get Junior against Tony directly, she tells him of how Tony's seeing a shrink, knowing full well both the connotations and the implications that would have in the mafia, but still manages to try and keep her distance.
Yeah. A psychiatrist. He's been seeing one for a while now. God only knows what he says. I don't want there to be any repercussions.
She goes even further and lets Junior know about all of his capos that have their mothers there, but still puts on the stance that she doesn't want anything to happen.
Larry Boy's mother's moved in here, and then Jimmy Altieri's mother.
3 of my capos have their mothers in this place?
Now, wait a minute. I don't like that kind of talk.
And then acts upset when the response is exactly what was to be expected.
What? What did I say now?
As if that weren't enough, she tells Artie that Tony was responsible for his restaurant's fire, leading him to pull a gun on Tony. Now, I doubt Livia ever thought Artie would shoot Tony, as Artie's not a killer and Livia probably would have known that. More than likely it was an attempt to rip, arguably Tony's only genuine friend, away from him, and it goes to show she knows how to attack from multiple angles. Either way, it didn't quite work out, but then again, she wasn't really trying to be boss. If she were, her MO suggests she would have handled it differently. For starters, she would have taken far more advantage of the capo's moms being in Green Grove than just using it to prompt Junior into action. Those mothers provide both a valuable source of information as well as an excellent channel for Livia to stir the pot. While information is always valuable, in the context of this discussion it becomes more relevant in Season 2, so we'll get back to that in a bit. During Season 1, the ability to spread information would be more valuable to Livia, and the network of mothers she has access to provide the perfect setup for her to spread that info, true or false.
Create a little dysentery among the ranks?
In just mentioning things in conversation, as Livia is apt to do, a lot of that info will inevitably get back to their sons, and that is why this is the perfect setup. If their sons happen to act on it, then it will never get back to Livia, because in order for it to get put on her, they would have to bring their own mothers into it, since they were the conduit. Just like in the Ralphie situation, where they wanted to know Johnny Sack's source, they would want to know the capo's source, and it's unlikely any of them other than Tony would do that to their own mother. More than likely, they would just make up a source, or just flat out refuse to say, like Johnny Sack. Now, as it turns out, Raymond and possibly Jimmy were informants, but that doesn't matter because the information would be getting to them through the other mothers and not directly from Livia. Even if they had picked up some of the things on the wire at Green Grove, it still might not have mattered because, like Carmine Sr., Livia was very adept at saying things without actually saying them.
Look, I know how to talk to people.
In Season 2, Livia finds herself in a situation where Junior is under house arrest, rendering him essentially useless as anything other than a figurehead, but Richie Aprile has gotten out of jail. Richie is a tough soldier with loyalty for Junior and love for Janice. Fortunately for Livia, she can easily manipulate both of them. Not only that, but Richie has his own reasons for wanting to take Tony out, as well as the support from Junior and Janice to do so. But they hit a roadblock when the Barisi brothers declined to join. At this point, Livia would have 3 potential options. First, had she gathered more specific info regarding why the Barisis were upset, either from their moms or through eavesdropping, while she was at Green Grove, she could have started feeding Junior more reasons to give the Barisis to join. Of course, Junior gave up on the idea and Janice shot Richie shortly thereafter, but that's where Livia's other 2 options lie, and they are right in line with her talents. Livia knows that Janice is motivated by money, and Janice knows that Livia is in the loop on mob issues, especially as they relate to Junior. While Livia didn't know Janice was going to shoot Richie, she likely would have been dropping hints the entire time that Richie was close to moving up, in an effort to get Janice to try and persuade Richie to push even harder to get the ball rolling. The prospect of Richie getting promoted soon might have kept Janice from shooting him as well. Either way, that would be irrelevant since Junior gave up on him and sold him out to Tony. But Livia has the easiest time manipulating Junior, so there's no doubt she could have convinced Junior not to call it quits. Any combination of these elements could very well have pushed the move against Tony to a successful conclusion. Of course, that wouldn't have mattered since she died shortly thereafter, but how would she have compared to Tony, and could she have made a good boss? While Tony possesses a physical presence and remarkable ability to be socially jovial that Livia doesn't, Livia has the advantage when it comes to manipulation and focus. Ultimately, I think that would be the main difference between the two, and why Livia had the makings to be a longer-lasting, more successful boss in the vein of Carmine Sr. Through sheer focus and willpower, she had the ability to come out on top against any opponent, just like she did against Svetlana, who is arguably the most strong-willed character on the show.
But in the end, she defeated me.
And that's just what everyone else would say. Thanks for watching this episode here on Soprano Street. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.